Troy Galloway is a construction manager and consultant, commercial and residential builder, and a certified inspector for all commercial and residential buildings. And now, here is About the House with Troy Galloway.
Welcome back, folks, to About the House. This is your humble host, Troy Galloway, owner of Galloway Building Services. We are so tickled to bring this show to you folks today, and we have some great guests, some people that I've been looking to get to you and visit with you for quite a while. But let me tell you a little bit about who we are, Galloway Building Services. We're just like this show, we're an absolute unique company. There isn't anybody in the Midwest that does what we do. We do naturally home and building inspections for commercial or your residence, but we also do construction inspections. We also do conflict resolution. So if you got a problem with your contractor, or if you're a contractor and you're having trouble with your customer saying the job's not done right, well, then you give us a call. Heck, fire, we all got a neighbor that comes up there and talks to one of our customers, and he knows everything except for what he's talking about. Well, that's why you give us a call so we can come in. We're a non-biased company. We don't longer do the work, but we've been doing this for now 42 years. I've been a certified construction inspector for over 32 years, a building engineer, and we're here to help you. Today, I have some folks, and I tease them a little bit because they're just great folks to visit with, but this is one of the most serious of our shows that we've done, and that's why we're going to take our time and ask some good questions. I met Sally Norris of Sherlock's Environmental Services, and they are a certified lead testing company, and they specialize in residential. They also do commercial, absolutely. Her and her husband, Chuck Norris. Oh, Chuck Norris. So I got the real Chuck Norris sitting here, right here. The one that probably saved more lives than that one on TV ever did. And I got a big old smile on his face right now. I just got kicked in the shins. That hurt. All jokes aside. And I got it. And Sally is his wife. Now, Sally is actually, when I got certified, she was the instructor down here at the St. Louis College. So I thought there was nobody that knows this better than her and her husband. And so we're going to jump right in here and introduce Sally and Chuck. Sally, folks, and Chuck, tell us how long you all been in business and what brought you to getting into this type of business in the first place.
Well, back in 1995, Chuck was a residential real estate appraiser, and he saw that the world was coming to doing lead inspections in housing. And he and a partner, Mike, got into doing this called the Lead Detectives. And they did the testing, got licensed and everything to do testing in residential. It was a federal law that came about in 1992. So they started that, and then they were bought out, and Chuck decided, well, maybe get out of the lead testing, and in around 2000, we got into doing lead abatement with city agencies, and that is doing the hands-on, replacing windows and doors and painting and all of that. It was, governmental money, and it was good for quite a while. That company was called Sherlock's Windows and Doors. Then we became, in 2002, Sherlock's Environmental Solutions. We were still doing abatement, and we started doing some testing. I retired from my previous job, which was a high school teacher, in 2002. So we changed the name to Sherlock's Environmental Solutions and started doing more testing at that time. We became a woman-owned business, and we are recognized by the state of Missouri and the airport authority to be WBE and DBE business. And as of now, we do strictly testing for residential. We do it for asbestos testing on a limited basis. We're licensed to do lead testing in Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa, and we're licensed to do asbestos testing in Missouri and Illinois.
Oh, wow. Well, how long have you? I know you as a high school teacher, and she did an absolute, folks, if you want to learn more about it, contact her. She did a great job in the class. I'm glad that she broke a few rulers, but all sincerity, she did a great job. But how long have you been teaching? And can anybody teach? You have to be certified to be a teacher, right?
You have to have lead training to be able to teach the lead classes, any type of lead training. Back in 2004, I started teaching for St. Louis University and ended up teaching all levels of their lead, which was abatement worker, supervisor, inspector, risk assessor, and project designer. I taught that up until a few years ago when I decided I was working way too much, and I now just strictly teach those people that are licensed to do the inspections, risk assessments, and project designers.
That's great. So and so both of you work together. So you do the instructing, and Chuck, what part of it did you get into here?
I'm the one that goes out in the field that actually does all the testing, which I've been doing for 25 years now. But she does all the other stuff that, prepares the reports.
So, I mean, when folks call, they're not calling a big, huge conglomerate. They're actually calling friends that are well experienced.
Right. And I do testing. I've done lots of dust wipes. I've done paint chip sampling out in the field. I teach what I actually do, which makes it rather unique because in a lot of instances, people aren't actually working in the field when they are training others to work in the field. And whenever there's a child involved for an elevated blood lead level and a parent is upset, that seems to be my specialty, to calm the parents down and talk to them and get them back to an even keel.
Yeah, I bet it's very emotional. I think a large part of it is emotional because of the lack of understanding of what really is involved. And that's why I really appreciate you folks coming on the radio show. And we are actually going to do a construction building science roundtable. They're going to be part of that. We'll keep you folks apprised of when that's getting ready to happen. That'll be sometime at the first of the year. But let's just jump right in here, if we could, please. And just some questions here we've got to ask you, but just honestly, just how is that lead paint testing done? Because we're getting, I am RRP certified also, and yet we're told that what we're taught to do is not really the right way of doing it. So kind of guide us, if you would, and tell us the best way to get the best results.
Okay. The best way is that we have an instrument that's called the X-ray fluorescence spectrum analyzer.
Say that fast 3 times.
Right. Everybody calls it XRF. And that is an instrument that uses a radioactive source that is placed against the surface. It shoots out radioactive rays like X-rays or gamma rays, and then it will immediately give you a result as to exactly how much lead there is in that paint. It shoots through multiple layers of paint. It doesn't matter if it's 1 layer or 25 layers. And most of your instruments, as long as they are up to date, will give you a reading in less than 5 seconds. And it's accurate as to what it is. And it will give it in what is considered to be the federal regulated level for lead-bearing paint.
So tell us about them swabs, because I think that's what people are going to first be recognizing.
The other method is what's known as do-it-yourself test kits that you can buy at a Home Depot or a Lowe's. All right. First of all, they tell you whether or not there might be some lead there. They don't tell you how much. And in doing this testing, the issue is not whether or not there's lead there. That's irrelevant. It's how much lead is there. And I have in my possession, in my files, a very, very lengthy report that the government had done on these do-it-yourself test kits, which says that they throw off false positives 75 to 95% of the time. Other than that, they're a great tool.
I want to make sure that folks realize the importance of doing this. And you really, I mean, we don't want to get into pricing a whole lot, but you're very economical.
But the problem with the test, with the swabs, called a lead check, is that you have to cut through the layers of paint. You've now created a hazard if there's lead paint.
Good point.
And then you have to rub it. You're not just rubbing it on the surface of it, because it might not be the top layer of paint that is lead. You're in an old house that's been painted numerous times. You have to cut all the way down there and rub it. Then it turns either pink or red. But it just says there, as my husband said, there is some lead. We don't know exactly how much. The XRF or even a paint chip sample being sent to a lab that is analyzed will give you an accurate reading. But again, with a paint chip sample, most homeowners don't want us coming in and cutting out 2 square inches of paint and all over the place.
No, and absolutely not.
The best explanation I know of the lead checks is that under my licensing, I am not allowed to use them if I'm doing the testing for hire. And the reason is, quote, because of their known inaccuracies.
So years ago, a real quick story, which I've shared in the classroom with you, was that we had some folks that had a fire damage house. They called me up because they wanted me to check to see if the plaster walls had been compromised. So I went out there to take a look at it. Well, yes, it had been it had huge bad fire in the house. It had been totally gutted. But I noticed that they had a lot of demo that nobody had cleaned up, and I noticed there was absolutely zero documentation on the job site. Threw up a red flag. So when I did my testing because RRP, right. Before I got certified with you, then they come back with the swabs, and they showed that so that got us started. But then we had to bring in somebody else, another company from out of town, because actually I didn't even know you folks existed. That's why it's so important to have you here today. And they said, yeah, you can do some things, I can do some things, we can't do either or. So that was a great explanation, because he wasn't allowed to use the swabs because they wasn't accurate. But make a long story short, the family, folks, it was sad. The family, 2 of the children under 5 years old, heavily lead poisoned. The mother had MS, and heavily lead poisoned. And Dad, he was over 40. He was lead poisoned. They said it wasn't as bad for him because of his age. And you could explain much more of that than I can. But anyway, not only did it destroy their home and them, but their barn they put up horses, and that was heavily lead poisoned. Now the horses also had it, and so. Just because, maybe the swabs may get you started, but it definitely is not anything to trust. But I got a question for you, and then we'll move over to some of these other questions. Now, you're testing when you use this machine that you're using. It tests all the layers in through it. If it's encased or encapsulized, would it be an environmental problem, even if there's lead behind the wall?
Okay.
Am I getting ahead of myself?
No, you're not getting ahead of yourself at all. What it is we're trying to determine if there is lead. Now, the rays will go all the way through at times and sometimes pick up like lead pipes in the wall itself. If that's the case, you just move over a little bit and, like 6 inches, 12 inches, and take another reading there to see if it is. If it's been, and you use the term encapsulate, which we in lead means that they have put a thick liquid coating over it. It will shoot through that liquid coating to tell you that there is lead underneath it. There's also another way to deal with it is called enclosure, where it's covered up. Now, if it's got drywall on top of plaster walls, it's probably not going to go all the way through. It's only testing what would be the top substrate.
So when it comes to the testing, because we've kind of bouncing around a little bit here, because Chuck, you said about the testing that you can't do the swabs. Well, who is actually certified to do real lead testing? I know construction workers are supposed to have the RRP, but that's not the same thing as what you're talking about,
No.
right?
And when you keep referring to RRP, you're talking about the EPA federal Renovate, Repair, and Paint program that by law, anybody who is working on housing or what they call child-occupied facilities, which are daycare, schools, etc., where kids under 6 years of age are, then they have to have taken an 8-hour course. And in that course, they teach them how to test for lead using these swabs. And the idea is because most of the time they're false positive, you are using a lot of materials when they're not necessarily needed. Whereas if you get an actual reading by somebody who is licensed by a state, and you have to become a licensed inspector, it's a 3-day course, 8 hours a day. Then you take a state exam, be it Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, whoever, and then that state will license you to do it, and you have to follow all the state regulations as well as any federal ones. To do risk assessments, you have to be an inspector and then 2 more days or 16 more hours of testing, plus another state exam. A lead inspector, the whole purpose of that is to go in and you're asking 2 questions. Is there lead paint? If so, where is it? And you're testing any coated surface, any painted, shellac, varnished surface to see if there is lead there. A risk assessor is not looking at the quality of lead. It's looking to see, are there actual hazards. Lead paint, if it's intact, not cracked, chip, peeling, flaking, chalking, if it's intact, not deteriorated, it's not considered hazardous. So we don't test any place where it's intact. We do dust wipes because you can't see lead dust. But we will then test any place where there is deteriorated paint, and then we write up a program to say if there are hazards, these are the suggested ways to correct those hazards. So it's 2 different things that are going on. One is saying, you got lead paint, okay, that's your information. The other one is saying, all right, you may have lead paint, but it's not hazardous, so just keep an eye on it. Or if it is hazardous, here are the ways to take care of it, to fix it.
So, on your testing of your wipes, does your, may I use the term gun, your XLF or XRF, does that pick up how much is in that off your wipe?
We don't use the XRF for a dust wipe. Dust wipes must be sent to a laboratory and be analyzed. And what we're doing, we are only wiping areas that are floors, window sills, or window troughs, areas where kids 6 and under most likely are going to be. Because the only way you can become lead poisoned is to either ingest it, swallow it, or inhale it, breathe it. And in most instances, you're not going to be inhaling it unless you are in an area where somebody is actually doing work on lead paint. Mm-hmm. Creating dust. Just a general house is not going to have lead dust floating around in it. It will have sunk to the floor. Where are your little ones? 6 months, and it says 6 months to 6 years is the range on that. Any kid that's down on the floor, and as you know, toddlers especially, they find something, the first thing it does, it goes in their mouth. So that's how they ingest it.
So now on the outside, I see a lot of these home flippers will say, people that buy houses and turn and sell them and rehab them. And of course, they go as fast as they can. I notice that they're not even following the RRP rules and regulations. And so we're seeing that the soil is definitely being contaminated. Tell us how folks might be able to get this. What do they look for? What do you do to help them?
Well, we do also soil testing, and it can only be bare soil. Any soil that has a covering on it is not considered hazardous.
Now, grass, is that considered?
Grass is a covering, mulch is a covering, pea gravel is a covering, and we don't make it bare to test it. And we scoop up anywhere from 3 to 10 little samples, and they're mixed together, and they go to a lab where it is analyzed as to whether there is lead or not in the soil.
Oh, okay. What would be if you had a problem? Would the XRF be qualified enough to pass and say, hey, we got an issue?
It can be used for screening purposes.
Okay.
But as far as going into any type of a report for residential or child occupied, it has to have gone to a lab. We can do the same thing with dust wipes. We can shoot them with our XRF, but it's not acknowledged as the official way to test. It's just saying, hey, you got a problem here, let's go into it in more detail, or something along that line. It's just, for some reason, EPA and HUD and state of Missouri and state of Illinois have not come into the 21st century when all of this stuff has become very good to be used.
Now, so we got a lot of these. Folks, I really want you to listen to that, because that's important. You know, we got these home flippers out there, and I love them. We've invested in properties. We're just, but to do it right, we want to make sure that if you have any kind of questions, Sally's going to give you their phone number and contact them and talk to them about it. I think that from my understanding, there's a lot of misinformation out there that you can get on Google. Am I right?
That's one of the things, especially that we tell parents when they get the letter from their pediatrician or health department saying your child has tested to have a blood lead level of a certain number, and the parents go into panic mode.
I know I would.
There are numbers that they should go into panic mode on. There are others that are just saying it's somewhere, let's try to find it, but I always tell them, stay off the internet. There's way too much information that is not always correct there. Contact somebody who knows what's going on with it.
Yeah, I think that's a real good idea, because there's nothing worse than when we're coming to our children as bad information or poor information. So what about pets? Does it affect them? When we all love our pets, and people of my age, our pets are our children.
Oh, yeah. And we have 2 dogs ourselves, and fortunately we don't live in an older house. But yes, pets can become lead poisoned. I was at my vet's office one time, and they asked me what I was doing now, and I told them dealing with lead paint. And they said, oh, we have a dog in the back that's been lead poisoned.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh, how did that happen? Well, the owner was working on old houses in the city and took the dog with him every day, and the dog laid there and was chewing on pieces of wood. And I said, what do you do for that? And they said, we just let it work through the system. I mean, they can't do a whole lot for the pets. And
well, no, that's another good. So if whether you got children or you got pets, you need to know it's being taken care of. So anyway, this machine that you have, this XRF, I guess we could just run down to Home Depot. What are they, $29 or something? Are they pretty cheap? Or
I guess it depends on what you consider cheap. But the one we have, which is capable of testing for lead in paint and dust and soil, the manufacturer's suggested retail price is $25,000. That's why there aren't a whole lot of them around.
Tell us about the guys that come in and say, we could take care of this and it does no big deal, and they don't have the proper, there's a lot of scamming going on out there right now.
Well, one of the things that you need to do if you live in a home built before 1978 is to have it tested if you're going to be having work done in there, and have it tested properly so they know if it's going to, require the use of somebody that is approved or certified. Really, it doesn't matter if there is lead or not. EPA says that these people have to have a certificate if they're working on homes built before 1978.
Jump in there,
If
Chuck.
you're going to have work done on a house built prior to 1978, and I can't emphasize this enough, do not allow the contractor to assume its hazardous levels of lead or to check it with do-it-yourself test kits, because if you do, there is a 50-50 chance you will wind up paying for labor and materials that in fact were not necessary.
And I'd like to jump back to the children part if we could. And, so how is normally paint? You talked about that, but where is it normally found? I think you said that just a few minutes ago. Is the children really, I know sometimes children do eat everything, but are they really eating the windows?
children will actually chew on windowsills. And that's about the only place that they're going to be chewing on something like that. When they're teething and they're looking out a window and you got a wood windowsill, they can really just go to town on it. They do not eat paint chips per se. They don't sit around and eat paint chips like potato chips, but it's the fact that all of this stuff creates dust. The dust is heavy. It's going to settle on flat surfaces. It's where the kids can touch it. It will stick to their fingers. They put their fingers in their mouth. They put their toy in their mouth. This type of thing is where the kids are more likely going to get it.
We're hearing, that's why I'm asking the story, because hearing, that's the trouble. We hear all this stuff out there on YouTube and Google and such. What about the toys coming over from China? We're hearing that they also or they can have, I should say, heavily lead presence. Is that right?
Quite a few years ago, there was a big deal. Fisher-Price toys coming from China had been painted with lead paint. EPA tries to test stuff coming in. They're not able to test everything that's coming in. Quite honestly, if you want to make sure that your little one is getting good toys, buy American-made toys. Be leery of things made in China, i.e. crayons are a good one that kids like to chew on. Point. Anything that's coming sometimes from India. There have been instances of a child getting severely lead poisoned when they were carrying around a little bronze or brass knick-knack, and they would stick that in their mouth all the time, and the kid ended up with a very high blood lead level on that, and that was the thing that came from it. We've gone into homes where a couple little boys got lead poisoned from their remote controls for their TV set was kept in an antique magazine rack that had lead paint on it. And the kids weren't chewing on the magazine rack, but they were sticking the remotes in their mouths. Things like that. It's just weird stuff that kids will come across that they can have it. One of the other areas that you need to be very leery of is ceramic tile.
Yeah, so you brought that up in the classroom. I'm curious, so tell me about that.
Ceramic tile is not considered to be a surface coating. It is contained in the glazing, but it's not a top layer on that. And so ceramic tile is not regulated by EPA. So lead can be in ceramic tile whether it was made in 1920 or in 2000, and we're almost to 2020. Brand new stuff can have lead in it. It's okay until you start breaking it up. You watch HGTV, you think, okay, I hate this turquoise tile in my bathroom. So they go in with the hammer and start breaking it out. It can contain lead. And then you have contaminated the house, but you're saying, but it's not paint. Well, the Ceramic Tile Institute has wanted for years for it to be regulated, and it's not. The government's just not getting into it.
Well, what about bathtubs?
Glazing is also found in the color that's on the bathtub. Hazardous levels of lead in tile can be found in tile of any age regardless.
Federal regulation for lead is 1.0 milligram per square centimeter. All right, when we test bathtubs...
Just how much is that? I mean, that's a big word on the radio here.
Okay, if you take a penny and divide a penny, which weighs like 2 grams, into 2,000 pieces, one of those pieces is enough to call it lead-bearing paint. So it's not a lot.
Wow.
Bathtubs, especially the old clawfoots, when we test those, will start 25 to 30 milligrams per square centimeter.
Oh, my stars. Now, what happens if the children come, because it is the children that we're most concerned of that, and my pets, but if my children in particular, so if they get this report back, what can they do to save their children if it's too late?
What will usually happen is around the age of 12 months, you'd have a 12-month checkup on your child. The child goes to the pediatrician, mainly depending on where you live. Certain zip codes have it, especially if you live in an older house. They're going to do a blood test on a child. And that will then come back with if there is lead or not. The level of concern, at which level people should start getting concerned, actually is any level of lead, and that comes back in micrograms per deciliter. 5 of those is considered when the child is considered to have lead in a certain level in their body. And below that, people don't get too excited unless they're the parent, then they freak out.
Right. I know I would.
But you can deal with that with diet. Foods high in iron and calcium are good for young children. One of the things that is recommended is to remove the child from exposure. And a lot of pediatricians say that, and that freaks the parents out because they think their kids are going to be taken away from it. That's not what it means at all. It means find where the lead is and fix that. The kids can still live in the home.
Good. I'm glad you said that because that's scary. That scares parents.
It does. I mean, it's very scary. I mean, a parent sees anything on that, they freak out. And I understand that fully.
So that's good. I'm glad that you explained that because that's because it's an emotional, know, and we children only get one chance.
Well, and one thing I do want to tell parents on this, when your child is tested for lead, please insist on what they call the venous draw, where they stick the needle in the arm and take the blood out of the vein.
Good point.
It's less harmful, less painful to a kid than what they call the capillary or the finger stick. Because you got a little one, you stick their finger, you know how your finger hurts, and then they squeeze it and all that, and it's not an accurate reading.
Oh, okay.
It's very highly inaccurate. So if it comes back high, they'll go back in and do a venous draw anyway. So start with it and know exactly where you are. Very quickly, we had one family who's 12-month-old, had a blood lead level of 12, 2 different times on a finger stick. They freaked. The kid moved to Grandpa's house because it was out here and away from the city and old housing and everything. Their house was immaculate in the city, very good and everything. I finally said, get a venous draw on the kid. They did. It was not detectable.
Wow, that much difference.
Yeah, it's highly different on that one.
Oh, that's a great point. Well, so my last question here before we wrap this up, and then if you would please share with us your phone number, email, and that kind of stuff, because I want these folks to be able to reach out to you. And also, folks, you can also come to our webpage and come to our Facebook page of Galloway Building Services. I'm going to be highlighting all their information out there, too. But I think the big question here is that we know it's 1978 is the time that we're supposed to have ended of the lead paint. But is there any lead paint or any kind of lead other than in tile that we should be aware of?
You can still get lead paint for commercial industrial use. It's not as readily available as it used to be, but, I mean, lead paint was good. It's just that if it's not maintained properly, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, actually, I want to have you guys come back again and go because there's no way. Well, I mean, I sat for a week with this lady and teaching us, and I mean, she still have more to teach us. So you please come back again. But Chuck, did you want to jump in here and add something here? You said you had a couple points.
It was regulated in 1978. The government did not tell the paint manufacturers that they had to dump all the remaining inventory in a river, so it was still being sold for another 2 or 3 years. Because I have found hazardous levels of lead in paint in houses built as late as 81, 82.
Sally?
Well, do you want the information?
Oh, yeah, please do. Jump in here. Tell us how to get everything about how they can find you and research you.
It's Sherlock's Environmental Services. And we have a webpage. It is leadtestingstl.com. You can call us anytime at 314-849-5819 or email us at sherlocks.enviro@gmail.com.
Please repeat your phone number again.
Okay, and our phone number again is 314-849-5819.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And please, you got to come back. And we'll let everybody know when we do the hazardous waste roundtable, construction roundtable, because I think that's going to be a great one where we're going to bring in all kinds of other professionals and talk about these hazards that's going on in the house. But come back to do another show with me, because there's just a ton more. Folks, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here. Wait, well, this is Troy Galloway. I am your humble host, owner of Galloway Building Services. And our phone number, if you ever have any kind of construction issues, or if you want to find out more about lead and these kind of things, and you want to get to contact the right people, I will send you in the right direction. You can find us at Galloway Building Services, Facebook. You can also Google us, and you can also find us out there at www.gallowaybuildingservices.com, right out there on our webpage. And we thank you folks very much for listening to our show. We thank you for everybody joining us, and thank you, Sally and Chuck, the real Chuck Norris. Right on. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Sponsored by Troy Galloway and Galloway Building Services, your top choice for professional home inspections in the St. Louis area. GallowayBuildingServices.com.